September 5, 1939. Tokyo. Late evening. Rain taps against the windows of a quiet study, steady and methodical. Inside, Isoroku Yamamoto sits alone at his desk, a lamp casting a tight circle of light over papers covered in neat, deliberate handwriting. Outside, the Imperial Navy celebrates its rise. Inside, Yamamoto is doing arithmetic. Not with numbers on a chalkboard, with nations. Yamamoto does not look like a man preparing for war. He looks like a man measuring time. His left hand, missing 2 fingers lost years earlier at Tsushima, rests on a stack of letters. They are private, they are careful, and they are dangerous. In them, he writes what few senior officers dare to say aloud. Japan, he believes, cannot win a long war against the United States. This conviction does not come from ideology or pessimism. It comes from memory. Yamamoto has lived in America. He has studied at Harvard. He has traveled across the country, watched factories stretch for miles, seen oil fields, railroads, assembly lines that never sleep. He understands something many in Tokyo do not or refuse to accept. Wars are not won by spirit alone. They are won by output. In meetings, Yamamoto listens while others speak of decisive battles, of crushing blows that will shatter American morale. He does not interrupt. He knows doctrine. He helped shape it, but he also knows its limits. Privately, he writes to a friend, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant." The line will later become famous, but at the time it is not rhetoric. It is calculation. Yamamoto believes Japan can dominate the Pacific for 6 months, maybe a year. After that, American industry will assert itself. Shipyards will multiply carriers faster than Japan can sink them. Pilot training programs will scale. Losses that cripple Japan will barely slow the United States. The longer the war lasts, the worse Japan's position becomes. This is not defeatism. It is logistics. In the corridors of power, this perspective makes Yamamoto dangerous. The Imperial Japanese Navy values aggression and certainty. Doubt is seen as weakness. To argue against war outright is impossible. So Yamamoto takes a different path. If war is inevitable, he reasons, then Japan must strike first, hard enough to force a settlement before American industry can fully mobilize. It is a gamble born of pessimism, not confidence. When discussions turn to Pearl Harbor, Yamamoto listens carefully. The idea is radical, risky, unprecedented, but it aligns with his grim logic. If Japan cannot win a long war, it must try to shorten it. A single, stunning blow. Carrier aviation. Surprise. Not because it guarantees victory, but because it is the only chance. In private letters, Yamamoto becomes more explicit. He warns that even a perfect opening strike will not destroy America's capacity to fight. He warns that national resolve may harden rather than break. He warns that Japan is betting its future on psychology over production. Yet he proceeds. Because once the political decision for war is made, his duty, as he understands it, is to give Japan its best possible opening. Even if he believes the ending is already written. On his desk that night, Yamamoto folds a letter and sets it aside. Outside, the rain continues. Somewhere in Tokyo, younger officers speak confidently of destiny and honor. Yamamoto thinks instead of steel, oil, time. This is the paradox at the heart of his story. The man who will design Japan's most brilliant naval strike does so while believing it cannot ultimately succeed. The architect of early victories moves forward with the quiet knowledge that each success only delays an outcome he dreads. He is not trying to win the war. He is trying to outrun reality. Years later, survivors will debate Yamamoto's intentions endlessly. Some will call him cautious. Others will call him prophetic. But in these early nights, alone with his letters, the truth is simpler. Yamamoto knows exactly what kind of enemy Japan is provoking, and that knowledge haunts every decision that follows. Early 1941. Naval General Staff, Tokyo. Closed session. The room smells faintly of ink and tobacco. Maps cover the table. Vast expanses of blue punctuated by islands, shipping lanes, and penciled arcs of aircraft range. Around it sit admirals who speak with certainty about destiny and resolve. Yamamoto listens. When he speaks, the room stills. He does not argue against war. That battle is already lost. Instead, he reframes the problem. If we fight, he says, measured and calm, we must strike first, and we must strike decisively. Some officers nod. Others bristle. Preemptive attack carries risk, political, operational, moral. Yamamoto accepts all of it without hesitation. Because hesitation favors the United States. He lays out his reasoning with precision. American carriers are the real threat, not battleships. American morale is resilient. The only leverage Japan has is surprise and tempo. Pearl Harbor is not proposed as a path to victory. It is proposed as a delaying action. In private, Yamamoto is more candid. He tells confidants that the objective is to buy time. 6 months, perhaps a year, to fortify the perimeter, secure resources, and hope the Americans choose negotiation over escalation. Hope, he knows, is not a strategy. But it is all that remains. The opposition is fierce. Senior officers warn that attacking Pearl Harbor will enrage the United States beyond restraint. They argue for a defensive posture, for letting America come west and bleed itself against Japan's outer defenses. Yamamoto counters quietly. America will not bleed the way you expect, he says. It will build. The debate grows heated. Yamamoto's position becomes precarious. He is too valuable to dismiss but too dangerous to ignore. Rumors circulate that his life is at risk from ultranationalists who view his caution as betrayal. Yamamoto is unmoved. He tells a colleague that if Pearl Harbor is rejected, he will resign. It is not a threat. It is a statement of limits. The plan moves forward. Carrier task forces, long-range navigation, shallow water torpedoes modified for the harbor. Months of rehearsal conducted in secrecy. Precision elevated to obsession. Yamamoto oversees every detail. Not because he believes it will change the war's outcome, but because failure at the opening would make everything worse. If Japan must lose, he intends it not to lose immediately. On the eve of execution, Yamamoto sends one last private message. He does not speak of glory. He does not promise triumph. He writes instead of obligation. I will do my duty. After that, the future belongs to forces beyond our control. December 7, 1941, will bring Japan its greatest naval success. But in Yamamoto's mind, success is already measured in months remaining, not victories achieved. As the carriers steam east, radio silence enforced, Yamamoto watches from afar and waits. Not for celebration, for consequences. December 8, 1941. Tokyo. Early morning. The reports arrive in fragments. Aircraft launched successfully. Surprise achieved. Battleships damaged or sunk. In the corridors of power, the mood is electric. Officers shake hands. Clerks run messages between offices. Newspapers prepare headlines that will proclaim a new era of Japanese dominance. The impossible has been done. America has been struck at its heart. Yamamoto reads the dispatches alone. He does not smile. Not because the attack failed, it succeeded beyond expectations, but because he understands exactly what it means. Battleships lie burning in Pearl Harbor, but American carriers are absent. Shipyards remain intact. Oil tanks are untouched. The enemy's capacity to fight has been wounded, not crippled. That distinction matters more than anything else. In private correspondence written days later, Yamamoto's tone is restrained. He acknowledges the brilliance of the operation. He praises the pilots and planners. But he does not celebrate. He writes instead about what comes next. Mobilization, expansion, an enemy now fully awake. Within weeks, American industry begins to shift gears. Contracts are issued. Shipyards extend their schedules. Aircraft production accelerates. What had been theoretical in Yamamoto's calculations now becomes visible reality. The war has entered its long phase, the one he feared most. In early operations after Pearl Harbor, Japan continues to win. The Philippines fall. Southeast Asia collapses with stunning speed. The perimeter expands exactly as planned. On paper, Yamamoto's gamble seems justified. But beneath the surface, the clock is ticking. Each victory requires fuel. Each loss costs trained crews. Each month gives American factories more time. Yamamoto tracks these trends obsessively. He argues for decisive action again and again, Midway in particular. If American carriers can be destroyed, perhaps the balance can be restored. Perhaps the war can still be shaped before industry overwhelms initiative. The logic is consistent. The risk is enormous. In meetings, Yamamoto's warnings grow sharper. He speaks of attrition as a losing equation. He points to training pipelines, replacement rates, industrial ratios. His arguments are technical, not ideological. They are increasingly ignored. Success has its own momentum. By the time the fleet sails toward Midway, Yamamoto's private doubts have hardened into certainty. He understands that this operation, too, is a gamble, one that must succeed perfectly to matter. There is no margin left. When Midway collapses in hours, not months, Yamamoto absorbs the news with a stillness that unsettles those around him. He does not rage. He does not deflect blame. He understands. The short war he hoped for has ended before it truly began. What remains is the long war he always feared. In a letter written afterward, Yamamoto notes simply that the balance has shifted irreversibly. It is not a dramatic statement. It is a factual one. Japan will continue to fight, but it will now fight against time, numbers, and replacement. 3 enemies no amount of courage can defeat. For Yamamoto, the tragedy is not that his warnings were ignored. It is that they were correct. Late 1942. Combined Fleet Headquarters. Night. The maps have changed. Where once there were arrows pointing outward, expansion, advance, pressure, there are now lines drawn defensively. Perimeters. Holding actions. Delay. The Pacific has grown larger, not smaller. Yamamoto studies the charts in silence. He is no longer planning victory. He is planning time. After Midway, every decision is shaped by subtraction. Fewer carriers. Fewer veteran pilots. Less fuel. Training programs rushed, shortened, forced to produce numbers instead of mastery. Yamamoto sees the consequences immediately. Aviation is not infantry. Cannot be improvised. Experience cannot be accelerated. A pilot who survives 10 missions is not the same as one who survives 100. Japan no longer has the luxury of patience. America does. Reports from the Solomons are troubling. American tactics improve with frightening speed. They rotate pilots, analyze mistakes, adjust formations. Losses become data. Failures become lessons. Japanese doctrine, once rigid by design, struggles to adapt. It was built for decisive battles, not grinding campaigns of exhaustion. Yamamoto knows this. He has known it for years. Now everyone else is beginning to learn. Privately, Yamamoto's tone darkens. He writes less often, but when he does, the language is stark. He speaks of imbalance, of trajectories, of a war that has slipped beyond strategic control. He does not blame subordinates. He does not criticize pilots who die doing exactly what they were trained to do. He blames arithmetic. By early 1943, Yamamoto's movements become predictable. He travels to forward areas, inspecting bases, boosting morale, projecting confidence. He understands the importance of presence, even if he doubts the outcome. It is during one of these trips that fate intervenes. April 18, 1943. Over Bougainville. Morning. Yamamoto's aircraft flies on schedule. Too precisely. American intelligence has intercepted and decoded the itinerary. Fighters are waiting. The attack is sudden and lethal. Yamamoto's plane goes down in the jungle. He is killed instantly. The news spreads quickly. In Tokyo, the reaction is shock mixed with ceremony. Yamamoto is elevated to martyrdom, his doubts erased from public memory. He becomes a symbol of resolve, not caution, of sacrifice, not warning. The irony is complete. Those who knew him well understand the deeper tragedy. Yamamoto did not die believing in victory. He died believing in inevitability. He had fought not to win the war outright, but to delay its consequences, to create space for negotiation, for restraint, for an end that did not require total ruin. That space never materialized. After his death, the war continues along the path he predicted. American industry overwhelms Japanese capacity. Losses accelerate. The perimeter contracts. Each new battle costs more than it gains. Yamamoto is no longer there to say, "I told you so." Nor would he have wanted to. His legacy is not Pearl Harbor. It is foresight, the rare clarity of a commander who understood that wars are not decided by courage alone, nor even by brilliance, but by systems that endure longer than their opponents. Yamamoto saw the system, and he knew Japan's could not last. Post-war years. Reconstructed Japan. Quiet recollections. When historians later examine Admiral Yamamoto's career, they struggle with the contradiction at its center. How could the architect of Pearl Harbor also be the man who believed the war could not be won? The answer lies not in ideology, but in realism. Yamamoto never doubted Japanese courage, discipline, or tactical skill. He doubted arithmetic. He doubted scale. He doubted time. He understood that the United States did not fight wars the way Japan did. America fought with factories, logistics, rotation, and endurance. Its strength was not brilliance at the moment of contact, but resilience over years. Japan's system demanded perfection. America's absorbed mistakes. That difference decided the war long before the first bomb fell. In Yamamoto's private writings, there is no bitterness, no sense of betrayal, only a quiet frustration that political momentum had overtaken strategic reality. Once war became unavoidable, his role narrowed to mitigation, reducing the damage, compressing the timeline, hoping for an outcome less catastrophic than total defeat. Pearl Harbor was not a declaration of confidence. It was an admission of weakness. Yamamoto understood something most wartime leaders could not admit, that initiating a war does not mean controlling it. Once begun, forces larger than any individual, industry, population, geography assert themselves. At that point, leadership becomes less about shaping victory and more about managing decline. Yamamoto chose to confront that truth early. After his death, Japan lost more than a commander. It lost a voice willing to speak uncomfortable facts in a system that rewarded certainty. Without him, strategic decisions grew more rigid, more desperate, more disconnected from reality. The war did not change direction because Yamamoto died, but it lost its last break. In post-war interviews, surviving officers recall Yamamoto with a tone that borders on regret. They remember his warnings, his insistence on limits, his refusal to confuse bravery with sustainability. One former staff officer later said, "He was the only one who spoke of how the war would end, not how it would begin." That is Yamamoto's true legacy. Not the carriers at Pearl Harbor, not the audacity of the opening strike, but the clarity to see that Japan's strength was temporary, and that time itself was the enemy. He knew the war was lost before it began, not because Japan was weak, but because its opponent was inexhaustible. And once that truth was ignored, everything that followed became inevitable. This is not the story of a prophet ignored. It is the story of a commander trapped between duty and reality, who chose to serve his country to the best of his ability, even while knowing the cost would be unbearable. Yamamoto did not misjudge the war. The war simply unfolded exactly as he feared.